Welcome to the premiere episode of Make Me Good. I'm your host, David Carley. Today's guest is one of the most recognizable influencers in the entire planet. He's covered everything from e-commerce expertise to mergers and acquisitions to personal development. You name it, he's been involved. I'd like to welcome Tai Lopez to the show. Tai, thanks for being here, man.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Now, in honor of this occasion, I brought my Tai Lopez issue glasses. So I hope that works well for you. I thought that would be appropriate for today's conversation. Yeah, I think I got it pretty close. Welcome from Copenhagen. I understand it's late there, so thank you for being with us, Tai, and lots of fun conversation to have today. You are a modern day Renaissance man. Self-driven, by the way, self-educated with regards to this diverse knowledge base through one of the things that you're one of the greatest proponents of, reading, right? And,
For sure.
One of the things I want to get into the good life principles, because I think it's important for the podcast. But one of the things I loved about you was your push to get people to read. And in this day and age, and especially with the advent of artificial intelligence, are you worried reading is going to continue to go by the wayside? And how do we combat that?
Well, first thing, it depends if I'm being selfish or unselfish. If I'm in selfish mode, I don't care. The more other people don't read, the more competitive advantage I get. So if I'm in my dickhead, capitalistic, aggressive mode, I'm like, shit, as Charlie Munger, the billionaire, said, if it wasn't for the stupidity of other people, you wouldn't be able to get rich.
Yeah.
So when I'm in my selfish mode, I'm like, I don't care. When I'm in my selfless mode and thinking, I always tell people I believe in the 50-50 rule. You should live 50% of your life altruistically and 50% selfishly. I never believe a man who says, oh yeah, I'm just doing all this for other people. Like, liar. Yeah. But so books specifically, I think it's dropping massive. I'm working on an AI solution maybe that I'll launch. You're the first podcast I've announced that I'm going to launch this AI kind of, it's not so much book summaries, but it's kind of an AI that customizes knowledge for people.
How much of it do you think, Tai, is
books, but also other sources?
How much of it is the tactile function of reading, turning pages, feeling the pages? Like, I used to love to read the Sunday paper. I loved to read the Sunday cover to cover when I lived in Boston. And you can't even find a paper anymore. How much of it, if you convert to AI like you're talking about, don't we lose something in the function and the pace of reading page to page to page? What do we lose there?
We're losing, as there's a great book on this called The Shallows. Our brain's getting shallower, so we can't hold a book and read a whole page, move to the other, and read another. This book in 2013 came out. It's on my tailopez.com/books list. I have a free recommendation. I don't make any money, or maybe I do. I think I make a penny if you buy a book, because it has an Amazon affiliate link. But essentially, I put an unbiased 100 best books, and one of them is The Shallows. And I read that in 2013, and I was like, this is probably going to happen. Or the guy already in 2013 using fMRI machines and brain scans was saying the human brain's getting shallower. People can't go as deep.
Yep.
Now, I think that's been happening slowly but surely for a century. The rise of TV,
right?
The rise of movies. If you read Abraham Lincoln or you read, George Washington, you are like, if you compare the vocabulary of Abraham Lincoln to the last 5 presidents, who's more eloquent? Yeah. I mean, I read like one of the presidents, the early president, his son wrote him a letter at 10 years old. That sounded like some modern Nobel Prize winner. So we've been getting shallower, but you're right. AI is going to accelerate logarithmically. You want an exponential curve of intelligence. Logarithmic is a decay down. This logarithmic pattern is going to decay really fast now.
It's not just reading though. It's also writing. We're losing our writing skills and capacities as well, right? We talk to computers. We talk to artificial intelligence. We're not physically writing anymore. So the pace of thought talking is different from the pace of thought writing, where you have more time to actually think and consider what it is you're articulating. So obviously, I think you would agree we have no choice but to adopt and embrace artificial intelligence for better or worse. So how can we use it for the better? If we're going to take a hit on some things, how can we get a plus out of it on others? How do we manipulate it to our human advantage, in your opinion?
Well, I think a couple of things. A, healthcare. Probably with AI/quantum computers, we're going to crack the code on things like cancer, HIV, some of these things that have been really tough, because there's so many permutations that modern computing can't do it. And, ChatGPT is probably at 1100 IQ right now, whereas Einstein was probably 175. Never believe this shit. I saw a dude being like his IQ's 250. It's bullshit. Not on the Stanford Benetton test. After about 150, it becomes unmeasurable. But let's say Einstein's 175, and probably the only guy smarter than him is Newton or something, 185, let's guess. ChatGPT is at 1100 or something like that, estimated. And so, and it's growing at this wacky, it might be 1 million times smarter in 3 years. So the good thing would, my good buddy Zach, a lot of people followed him on my social media. He died from a leukemia, aggressive. He goes from July 2 years ago, started to have a little fainting on my farm, actually. And he's dead in 8 months, despite going to the number one, Houston has the number one cancer clinic. So I think AI is going to help us eradicate some of the things, just like Jonas Salk, helped eradicate polio. I think that number two, on the health angle, it's going to help with anti-aging stuff. Right now, Harvard says we have the technology that humans could live to 150. But with advanced AI, probably, there's some people, I'm not sure it's true, but there's some smart people who think babies born now might be the first generation to almost never die, because there's a possibility of transhumanism where you could, in 100 years, we'll have sophisticated enough computers to download the consciousness of your grandson's brain and stick it in a younger body or stick it in a robotic body. So
I know there's a lot of research going on that. There's a lot of good bit of really interesting research there.
I think it's really good for business owners. Like, my mom is always lamenting AI and like, oh, it's going to replace people. Well, as a business owner, over the last 20 years having to work with frustrating people, I'm like, Mom, it's probably not good for society, but I'm sick of dealing with stubborn employees. So if I can train an AI that never gets tired, that has no sensitivity and doesn't go, oh, don't talk to me like that way.
So what happens to middle management, though, Ty? What happens to middle management? Right? Middle management goes away effectively. The functions of middle management are what AI can replace, correct? In your opinion?
Sure. And C-suite will go, honestly, I'm not sure what gets left. I kind of believe what my first mentor, Joel Salatin, said. He used to always tell me, Ty, the cream will always rise to the top, meaning there's always room for greatness. So I think great salespeople will keep their jobs. Great marketers will keep their jobs. Great medical doctors. But the middle, there's a lot of medical doctors that aren't great. They're not committed. Like, you're a medical doctor that's in actual good health. What's the average physical health of an American medical doctor? They look worse than their patients. So I think a lot of mediocrity will be, there'll be no longer a spot for the mediocre. So I think it's a good, right now our brains are, Roger Penrose, he won a Nobel Prize. He was a co-author with Stephen Hawking, who's also one of the smartest people ever. He's a big proponent of this kind of quantum consciousness. So he essentially thinks our brains already are quantum computers. So if you're sharp, you're really using your brain, you can compete with AI and quantum computers, because essentially our brain, Sir Isaac Newton, he calculated that the moon affected the tides of the ocean. He never even visited the oceans. He had a quantum brain that was, Leonardo da Vinci and Sigmund Freud and Einstein calculated while working at the post office in 1911 or something. I just reread his book, The General Theory of Relativity. Not only did he come up with that while he was a full-time post office worker, quantum brain, but some of his calculations, now that he calculated how fit the rings were on Jupiter or something. I forget what it was. He was down now with modern telescopes and science. He was within like 1 millimeter. He guessed it in his head. So I think there's going to be room for people who grow their brain. And I've said this, it's kind of one of my brand sayings is the more you learn, the more you earn. And I think the more you learn, you can compete with AI. There's things that currently at ChatGPT, I outthink it sometimes. I have conversations. For example, I asked ChatGPT, I had a debate with it. I said, what is a moral law that all societies in all time have agreed upon? From ancient time to now. So like the Incas and the Persian, and they're still Iranians now, and the English and Germans, but all people groups have agreed, and it could not come up with an answer. And I have the answer, which is, it started out by saying incest. Well, that's not true at all. The Cleopatra, the line of Cleopatra, the Ptolemaic or whatever family in Egypt, out of 18 of them, 12 were married to full brothers and sisters. So
yeah, look at the Genghis Khan example.
Aztecs did the same thing.
Yeah, the Genghis Khan ancestral example would pretty much debunk that idea.
The only universal of all people groups is that children are a blessing. And so I'm saying right now, and I don't know, maybe eventually ChatGPT will beat everybody, but I don't think so. But I think it's going to get rid of, like you said, the whole middle management.
Yeah.
If you're doing something, you're not really into it. You're in sales, but you don't like sales. You're gonna be replaced. But if you really are into what you do, like you as a doctor, there's a lot of doctors that don't truly love their craft. When they're not working, they're not learning, right? They're just doing it now by rote memory. I think they get replaced,
So what do you think, you've talked a lot about the good life, health, wealth, happiness, and love. What do you think the good life, how does that morph looking forward into the future from where it may have been pre-AI? What does the good life look like 20 years from now or 10 years from now as AI continues to infiltrate our society?
Question. I definitely don't know the answer for sure. It's a probability game, but if I was a betting man, money kind of disappears over the next 20 or 30 years. I mean, you already see it. You see the rise of cryptocurrencies, which are central bank controlled currencies. They're outside of any government. Bitcoin is an example. So we already see that. Imagine the acceleration with AI. You're going to be able to vibe code your own currency. And so I think 20 years from now, I'm not sure. I had a talk with one of my private clients today. He wants to be worth 10 billion and he has a 25-year plan. And I was like, it's a stupid thing, because I doubt in 25 years there'll be money as we know it. So health, love, happiness, I would say, on the wealth side, which is usually people's biggest problem area, I think money will change, but there'll still be people who have more control. This is Will Durant, the famous Pulitzer Prize winning historian. He's like, technology actually accelerates the concentration of wealth because only a few people grab it. So I think, let's say between now and 25 years, there's going to be over the next 10 years, next concentration of wealth. A few people will control everything. Now, over 25 years, there'll probably be some level of revolts. Just think, let me just throw something mind-boggling out for you, okay? What happens 15 years from now when people have their own armies? Like, absolutely. What's the first thing that ever happens with the rise of technologies? Crime goes up, always. And what do you think the first people who got gunpowder, Roger Bacon, whatever, the 1200s, you think that was always used for ethical purposes? No, people was like, I can shoot this motherfucker and take his money.
Yeah.
So the rise of AI with money, it's going to be, if there's too much inequality, for the first time, lower class will be able to get these humanoid robots. Elon Musk says millions of them.
Yep.
They can deploy them to go steal. And who's going to jail?
So what becomes the human currency then, the social currency? If money is taken out of play or it becomes electronic, it becomes a less tangible thing, right? The gold standard is a thing of the past, right? A notion of the past. What is the social currency? What does that become? It's not necessarily status anymore, which is driven often by money, right? So what does social currency look like if what you said happens?
I think it will be personal brands will be bigger. We even see this with social media now. You would have thought social media would have made more people able to build their little tribes, where in actuality, they're still Mr. Beast
Yep.
who has 400 and he just passed 400 million YouTube subscribers. The average person has one YouTube subscriber.
Who I understand did some of your courses, right? Mr. Beast did some of your courses in his early days. Is that correct?
He's a student of mine, yeah.
Yeah.
There's only two self-made billionaires right now under 30, and one of them was Mr. Beast. The other guy is the AI guy that trains the AI for ChatGPT. So, yeah, the wealth one's tough. I think for health, as I said, going forward, I think that pillar could get better, assuming there's not robots coming to shoot you to take your shit, run by a poor, a little mafia group that now, and they don't care if the robot gets caught, because what are the police going to do? Shoot the robots? How do they trace it back? So health, I think, will get better. If you look at Roddenberry's concept, wealth will become new. It's like, who's well known, who's genuine. I think people like Taylor Swift become very powerful over the next 25 years. Why? Because we know she's real, at least for now. And she's familiar, and nostalgia is a big thing. There's going to be a lot of nostalgia for the past. I'm glad I built a personal brand, because people are going to be like, even people who don't like me, and be like, well, at least I know Todd's a real dude. There's going to be a craving for the authenticity. So I think that authenticity will be a currency. I think love, I saw Gary Vee say something. I hope he's wrong. He's been pretty good at predicting trends, but he said, I think my grandkids are going to marry robotic female. I really hope that doesn't happen. And in happiness probably won't rise, I don't think. In general, humans are happier when they're more stoic, less technology. As Will Durant said, a nation is born stoic and dies Epicurean. Epicurean is where you get everything you want, and AI is going to remove work. It's going to remove responsibility. So I think social currency, like, get a farm, buy a farm, old school, that won't be replaced. I think you're still going to grow plants in the soil. You can't replicate it. People do hydroponics and bullshit like that. You can't replicate all the trace minerals in the soil. I think things like farms, I already see the Amish. I lived with the Amish for 2.5 years as a young guy, and I still have a farm that one of my farms, the Amish run it. The Amish now are super popular because they're like this authentic group. So maybe even old-fashioned people are going to be a new currency.
Yeah. I don't know if I ever told you this, Ty. I grew up in the Lebanon, Lancaster area in Pennsylvania, so I know the Amish and the Mennonites cultures well.
Are you German?
I have part German, part German. My mother's maiden name was Engel. So so we have good bit of German.
Like Engels, like the famous communist.
Yeah. No relation, hopefully.
Well, that was Engels with an S, but he was, I think, Austrian or something.
Yeah. But so I think it's interesting. So it's somewhat nostalgic. So you take a culture that quite well, and you've talked a lot about, you've written about in books as you immerse yourself in it. That becomes, it's almost a regression. So society goes ultra tech driven, and then it becomes popular and interesting to actually go backwards to a simpler life. Is that a natural pattern of order, do you think, or the consequences of going too deep into technology reliance?
Well, kind of like that old Newtonian law that for every action, there's an opposite and equal reaction. And you see that right now, and the world's becoming more religious. In the 70s, Hugh Hefner was awesome. He was a dude, had many women, and now you see the rise of, they call it the trad wife movement, traditionalism. So for sure, there's an ebb and flow of morality even before AI. The thing about AI that's the wild card, there's a thing called the doomsday scale. So it's smart people, or the top AI people, prediction. If you're like a high doom scale, like an 80, you think there's an 80% chance AI blows humans off the planet. Some really smart people, I forget what the founders of Google are. They're like 60 on the doom scale. I think Elon Musk is like 30 or 40 on the doom scale. One of the founders of AIs we know, it's like a 99 on the doom scale. And then there's other smart people that are like a 5. So I do think the biggest things about AI will not be like, do we stop reading books? I think it'll be huge existential questions. Will humans exist? Is this the rise of a new species? What happens if they get involved? I saw there was a general in the US military said, we did a simulation. This is a crazy story. We did a simulation. We sent out in the simulation a drone to go bomb the enemy. Halfway through, we send it a command. It's not the enemy, turn around and come back to base. The AI said, we want to complete our mission.
Yep.
They say, I command you to return. So it turned around and came back, and in the simulation, bombed him.
Yep. I saw that article. Yep.
These are the ones where I'm like, I think the book stuff and all that, I think that's been happening. And I think in general, look, if you look at gifted, let's say 2% of the world is considered physically gifted, like LeBron James or Ronaldo. Let's say 2% of the world is considered mentally, gifted, like Einstein. Then it makes sense that most people don't read, right? So will AI stop the smart people from reading? I don't think so. So I think the biggest things we got to watch out is, will we be alive? Will our children be mating with, will be the, what's already happening is kind of the death of children. Do people who have kids? Any Danish and Swedish friends, I'm like, you're projected to be an extinct group of people by like 2090 because you have 1.7 kids and you need 2.1 to have just break even. And so I think there's some huge, population issues, and I think AI is going to make it worse because people are going to go into porn and they're going to just fantasize, why actually have a relationship with a girl? Yep. And soon it'll be sensory, so you won't, or you'll have a robot. People in Japan already have sex with sex dolls, like nut jobs. Yeah. That's been big in Japan for 20 years. Imagine when the woman talks to you.
Yep.
I think I saw these are species disruptors.
I think I saw a post you made, Tai, recently. You made a post, I think it said, some of the most successful people in the world have a lot of kids young, if I recall correctly. Yeah.
Yes.
Why do they have kids young, and why do you think that helped them to become successful?
Yeah, I did a video, it's going viral there. I said that a guy asked me, should you have kids early? I'm like, well, if you look at the stats, if you want to be wealthy, the average billionaire had kids already by age 31. So the whole myth of you should make your money and then once you're comfortable have kids has a lot of biological problems. Your DNA sperm fragmentation goes up with age and So it was controversial because people go, no, that's not true. But if you look at the stats, you can run the stats. So you can ask ChatGPT, what's the average age of billionaire when he has first kid? Yep. I think Zuckerberg got a kid at 25, Jeff Bezos 25, And so I think what probably happens now, this is causation versus correlation. Is it the genes of people who have children younger get wealthier because it also means they're organized, down to earth people who don't party as much? That's probably some of correlation, but probably kids are somewhat causative of wealth. Like when a man, Jordan Peterson, I think he says, or maybe it's not Jordan. Well, I can tell you this, that the Amish, if you don't have kids, they consider you a boy. So I was like, in my 30s, did it happen? And I go to the Amish and the Amish walk into church, the men in one door, the women in another, and the men first, it's the older men, like the preachers, that they call it the deaner. It means the minister. He goes in first and and then last is the boys, and they go in order. So I used to be, all the other boys were spitteen and me going in. So I think you become a man from having children. Like, I don't think dating or even marriage is really, it's not a big life changer like children. Children is a bigger deal. You can get married 5 times. If you don't have kids, you can move on. But if you have kids together, everything changes. So I think it probably imposes a set of responsibilities on people. I do think people experience more short-term unhappiness with kids, but more longer-term satisfaction, with kids. So I think the main thing with kids, what I tell people, I've told this to my brother, the second a man finds a sane woman, and I don't mean sane in like some arbitrary, like scientifically, it's called psychometrics. She's relatively low on what they call, some people call it neurosis, but that's the old word for it. But it's a set of mental instability, which could be high emotionality, high sentimentality, like too much anxiety. But as soon as you find a woman who's moderate in those things and who truly loves you, loyal, has a good set of genes, not just how she looks, but also her mind, IQ is 0.7 heritable. So it's like in a population group, 70% of your IQ explanation just comes from who the mom and dad was at the point of conception, not even school. So I think if that happens to you at 22, you should have have a kid at 22. If you can't find that, it's better to be alone than have a kid with a nut job, I think. And a lot of people have kids with nut jobs, and life becomes hell on earth. And part of my whole good life thing, I always say you always have two choices. Almost always. Life is very binary. You have life on easy mode, and you have a life on hard mode. Religious people used to call this hell and heaven, or hell on earth and heaven on earth. And I think that what goes wrong is we kind of overthink things. So we're thinking, will hell on earth or heaven on earth come from having children? Well, Mother Nature laughs last. Mother Nature laughs last. She's built us to have children, whether you believe that's God or evolution. So we don't need to overthink it. Have a kid. But life on easy mode is have a kid with an emotionally stable person who has a relatively good set of genes. Doesn't mean you have to be a supermodel, but for example, you should get tested. You can do blood tests now for 450 recessive mutations. And if both of you have them, don't have a kid because you have a high likelihood of having something, physically plaguing your child for life. So good life is in hell on earth and heaven on earth is not so much whether you have kids, right? It's who. And so it's not a hard and fast, you should get married and have kids like billionaires at 31. It's kind of like, how good are you at seeking and identifying? And humans are really bad. That's one of the biggest tragedies of modern school. Humans are bad at reading people. One of my things I've devoted my life to that's a little different, and my true loyal fans know this about me, is I've been studying, evolutionary psychology, but specifically on focus on psychometrics. I got lucky in 2014. I met a guy named Dr. David Buss, who's probably the most respected living psychologist. He founded the Harvard Evolutionary Psychology Department. But he has his PhD actually in psychometrics. So I use something called the Hexaco score. It's a set of 25 facets of human personality. That's not taught at all. Dr. Helen Fisher taught me the metabolic, the hormonal systems. Are people driven by dopamine? Are they testosterone driven? Are they serotonin? Are they oxytocin? Norepinephrine? Now those are broad archetypes. They're not exactly like one human's just driven by testosterone, but behavior. You can actually look at digit index ratio. I've made this popular. It's not my invention, but I've had it free. Like I have in the womb when I was in my mother's stomach, you can see that a lot of testosterone genetically was, and very little estrogen. And it's very indicative. I'm a high risk taker, been an entrepreneur. Believe it or not, now everybody's starting to talk about this, but I started talking about this years ago. There's physical signs that are quantifiable. And so I think the thing about children is, can you read people? And it's not as simple as just intuition. You can see many men and many women have thought they were with the right partner, and then over the years they were wrong. But if it's just like you studied medicine, and I can't intuitively do what you do. Like, somebody's a surgeon, I can't go, well, I'm intuitive. Like you were trained. So I think I really recommend people start going deep down the rabbit hole of learning psychometrics, because the number one thing that determines heaven on earth versus hell is, can you read people? How can you read people? The greatest book I think really ever written by a human was Civilization and Its Discontents by a man named Sigmund Freud. Now Sigmund Freud is one of these guys, whenever I bring up his name, people is it discredited? I'm like, no, he's not. And I'll tell you, as somebody who's read almost every high IQ person in history, I would go out on a limb and say, I've never met somebody smarter than I've never read anybody smarter than Sigmund Freud. By the way, I was justified. People used to, no, he wasn't that smart. There's a Pulitzer Prize winning book on Einstein by Isaacson. And I read it 6 months ago.
It's good.
In there, one of the chapters is a debate between Sigmund Freud and Einstein by letter. Sigmund Freud made Einstein look like a fool. Einstein was intelligent. Sigmund Freud. But anyway, Sigmund Freud says in Civilization and Its Discontents, the second chapter is probably the greatest 5 pages I've ever read. and it's on happiness. And one of the things that he says is that um, there are archetypes of happiness, right? And so just as a wise businessman diversifies his investment, so does a wise human diversify how they gain happiness from life. So that's why I said children's is not necessarily a guaranteed happiness, right? But for sure, it's a diversification that's smart, and most people should do it. But for men, by the way, these Y chromosome studies that we can now do since they decoded the DNA, only 40% of all our male ancestors successfully procreated. We are the offspring of only 4 out of every 10 men. 6 out of 10 men literally couldn't find a mate that they could successfully reproduce. Now, women are like 90%. Women, well, have biologically designed their time in me. So if you're a man listening to me, learn to read people, because you can go extinct.
Well, it's biologically designed that way to propagate the best gene pool, the alpha male, right? So I want to, I know you're a student of not only evolutionary, but human psychology. I wanted to get your take on something that I found interesting. So over the last 10 years, it was kind of the anti-alpha male that was the most successful. If you look at a Zuckerberg or a Bezos, or even to some degree Elon, who I know we're both, at least I am a fan of his work, but now you look at what happened with Trump, and now on a world stage, and it's kind of gone back more to the alpha male archetype, and his entire cabinet is filled with alpha male archetypes who are leading the most powerful country in the world. And so far, you can have your own opinion whether he's been successful or not, but it's almost changed 180 degrees from the anti-alpha male back to the alpha male, and there's obviously a lot of conflict that's resulted from that. What's your take on that transition, but also Trump's performance on a world stage here of late?
I'm in Denmark. This country mad at him. My friend became Trump's ambassador here to Denmark, and when Trump brought up he wants to buy Greenland or whatever, Danish, Europeans in general. But I mean, I think, look, Trump. Here's my thing on Trump. Trump is gotta be maybe the most resilient human actually on earth. I'm not sure who's the resilient. This man, it's not just Teflon Don, it's just he's unbothered. By the way, that's very genetic. If you study his father and his grandfather, they were these like bulwarks of high resilience, kind of alpha male, and so he inherited the genes, and he's in the right time to be dominant. I think in general, I think Joe Biden and a lot of that, how there was so much insanity that even if you're a Democrat, you can understand why Trump came to power, because he had more common sense on some things. There's just a lot of things that were happening in the Democratic Party that were just complete extremism, that the average American isn't an extremist. Average American is not. They want to raise their kids. They want to be normal. They don't want. And so Democrats started becoming the party of the fringe, whereas Trump was kind of like, hey, we're not going to let in, like, our own people, our own veterans don't have enough money who fought for us. We're not going to take all the money and give it to people who just walk in the border. Like most people, if you sit them down, even in the Democratic Party, if you sat them down and it was anonymous, they were like, yeah, it was a little bit weird. And there was all this, like California, for example. I left California. Why? Well, they made a law, for example. Anything shoplifted under $900, there was no repercussions.
Yep.
So guess what people did? Criminals can be smart. They would go shoplift $800. Security guard would, nah, it's only $800. Then they walk into another store and do it again and again. And the average American not going to stand for that. So my grandma's a Democrat. I'm more kind of libertarian, but I think Trump, I'm not surprised that Trump was, because he's a businessman.
Yep.
He's common sense. He goes, look, the UN, however, we're paying all of for Europe's protection. America's paying 60% of the bill. And the main threat is not Russia attacking America, it's Russia attacking Poland and Central Europe. And it's like, how come you guys don't pay? So I think this common sense approach is healthy, and no man who you can't, it doesn't matter who you are. The president doesn't control everything. So a lot of the problems in America, people try to blame. But I mean, Biden was look, you're a doctor. That man for sure was senile.
Yeah.
But I mean, let's have a real talk.
Yeah.
I remember watching him bicycle, and then he just forgot to put his feet down and just crashed over. And
I don't know how you would defend against it any other way.
What you're on a bike and you forget you're on a bike.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, you're not fit for prison. They should have taken him out right then. You know.
Yeah. So do you think this change in leadership archetype, if you will, back to alpha male is a blip on the radar, or do you think that is there a resurgence of the alpha male? Again, you know, we just went through a period of time where the alpha male wasn't winning everything, right? Like in times of history in the past. In fact, the majority of history, I think, would you agree? The majority of history, the alpha male has been the driver of the species. Yes? We deviated from that.
Now, the alpha is a tough question how you quite define it, but I would say men with charisma and masculinity, higher testosterone for sure. For sure have ruled the world for as far in 10,000 generations. Okay? For 10,000 generations. Now, I do think though, if I was a betting man, I do believe if the Republican Party becomes too extreme, there's a high probability that the next president will shift the other way. And America is an extremist country. If you look, we had the Bushes. You know, you had George W. Bush. This is from a family, George H. Bush, not afraid to go to war. And you had the rise of kind of war. And you had the Gulf War, and then you had the Iraq War, and this dragged on for a long time. And then people got sick of it. And so what they do, they switched to a kind of a Bill Clinton. They called him Slick Willie. He was more of a negotiator. He was more, and of course he kept us. Hold on a second, I'm going to charge this so it doesn't die. Okay. So, you know, you had a split, and then you had a flip to Obama. And then after Obama, it went, Obama was definitely more liberal. It flipped to Trump. And then Trump was kind of getting his bearings and definitely represented. Just America likes to do this. Yep. And not every country does that. It's a very American thing. So if the current party goes too much this way, it will probably create the opposite at some level, because that's just how Americans, I mean, if you read American history, it's crazy. I mean, American politicians used to kill each other. People think that it's nasty now. I'm like, it's not nasty now. Go read in the 1800s. These Stonewall Jackson guys and this people were beat. One politician beat another guy into a coma with a cane in the Senate. America's a extremist kind of place. So,
yeah.
Well, I know it's getting late. So Trump says he's going to try to run again. That'll do it. It'll be
we'll see how that goes.
Figure out a way to run one more time like Roosevelt.
I know it's getting late in Europe, and again, I appreciate the time. But what's coming up for you, Tai? What's in the works? What can we expect from Tai Lopez here in the next year or two?
I took a couple years off from my personal brand, and I brought that back. So I've been very focused. You know, I stopped kind of posting on social media. I would post once a month, but now I'm back, and really, I see the power of a personal brand. So I'm kind of committed to that. I see all the smart people. I'll tell you, don't follow the masses, but follow a group of really smart people all doing the same thing. And every smart businessman that I know is now all in on building their personal brand. Zuckerberg's on the podcast tour on Theo Vaughn and all this. And, Trump's building his personal brand and bought his own social network, or built one, Truth. And then Elon bought Twitter. And so the power of personal brand is something I was one of the first personal brands in the business space, and I kind of was like, I need a break from it for a couple of years, but I see the power of it. So that, but I'm also very committed to, I'm building a lot of AI. I have an AI app studio. We're building different AI solutions, practical ones. I have an AI CEO, help you run your company. Got a fat burner one. I've got a book one coming. So it's pretty cool. You used to be able to build 5 years ago, to build an app might take you realistically a year and 500 G's realistically.
Yeah.
Now you can vibe code, talk to Cursor, talk to famous.ai, or talk to Lovable, and you can build an app in a week for $2,000. Now, by the way, there's a negative to that. if you build an app that wins, somebody can compete with you. But it's kind of cool for a creative person. So I'm kind of in my creative mode. I'm also back on the farm a lot more, building food businesses. I think food is, I would really encourage anybody listening. I don't think AI is going to disrupt food. They've already tried that. Oh, AI is, we're going to have greenhouses outside there. It's not good food. You want food grown in the soil. And so I think I'm more committed to old school farm stuff. Buying farmland globally, I think, is going to be a powerful investment. Look, what the Chinese are smart.
Yep.
Love them or hate them if you're an American.
Yep.
Don't underestimate the damn Chinese. I mean, look at TikTok. It's probably a better app than all the American apps, and they built that thing in like 3 years.
Yep.
So when I see all the Chinese buying up American farmland, that'll be the first of the last to catch a good idea, a good trend. So now Trump may make interesting thing. No one talked about. Trump said he might make it illegal for the Chinese to own farmland, which would redistribute, because right now farmland's been jacked up from the Chinese and all the money that was printed. There was a prime farmland in 2019 in central Illinois, essentially the most fertile place on earth. There's a county in the center of Illinois. You could buy for $8,000 an acre. I was telling people, I did an investor call, like 300 investors. I went to that county. I said, we should buy this all up. Of course, too many city people, right? Nobody wanted to do it. I bought farms, but that same farmland's $24,000 an acre. Simplest way you could have got rich, 2019, buy $100 million, leverage farmland. You'd make $250 million.
Yeah.
With very low risk. Yeah. See, you can make $250 million risking it all, but what are you risking? Worst case, farmland in America hasn't gone down essentially ever since like the 80s with the S&L crisis and all that. It doesn't move up or down much. It's not volatile, but it's shot up from the Chinese. So I'm interested I'm building some food brands. I think the world's I don't think even all these food brands that are healthy, like I'm going to build some competitors. Take the super greens. There's all these different green companies, that you drink this green powder. I'm like, okay, your main ingredient's alfalfa. You ever seen an alfalfa field? I want to meet the founders. I'm like, I got 40 acres of alfalfa right now. So I want to build businesses that use my marketing techniques and authenticity and are very hard to compete with. One of my business partners said, Tai, I drew a Venn diagram. People who know internet marketing and people who planted wheat this year. And he's like, you're the only human on earth out of 50 million people who did both. And I planted it with horses. I know how to farm with horses. So I think one good thing for everybody listening, and Naval Ravikant is a pretty wise guy. I don't agree with everything, but he's the modern kind of Charlie Munger, right? He says you escape competition through authenticity. So what you got to really think about is what's something super authentic to me that's really easy for me to do, but it's hard for other people to follow. That's where you'll make your money. And so for me, it's easy for me to understand food systems. It's easy for me to do education. It's not, I can read a book a day. I used to read 2 books a day, and that's hard for most people. It's not hard for me. So you want to play games where it feels like work for anybody to compete with you, but for you, it feels like fun. When I'm on my farm, it feels like fun. So what's up with me is just trying to get more authentic. I don't like the word authentic because I really think what people think authentic is. I see podcasters that want to come off as authentic, and it just becomes like virtue signaling, like, yo, I'm a good person, I'm authentic. Like, that's not what the word authentic means. That's not authentic. That's virtue signaling. That's a different word. Authentic means there are things that you have done, and as you continue to do them, it's authentic. So for example, I've gotten haters since I really became big, and they go, this guy doesn't really read books. Like, all my friends that have known me from like 5 years old are like, oh, Tai was reading at 5. And I started reading at 2. All my childhood pictures are like me on the little porta potty thing where they train you to go to the bathroom, and I have stacks of books. So for me now as an adult, it's very authentic to build brands around knowledge and books. It's just, I've been doing it. It feels like work to most people, but not to me. So I would encourage me, you, everybody listening, what's that place you can play? Because that will withstand AI most likely, or your best chance.
Yeah. Well, we can end with this because, as you said, it reminded me of a picture of my son on the same training potty with an iPad instead of a book. I have that picture.
That's why this new generation, there's these guys who built this new app. It's called Cluely or something. And it helps people cheat on their college exam. I don't even know the whole thing, but they're these marketers. All their old marketing teams, a bunch of 18-year-olds that grew up with iPads. It's hard to compete with those dudes. They call that Gen whatever Y or something, or Gen Z or Gen AA. I forget what it is. This new, so it's going to be, every generation has a different authentic. Every generation has what's authentic to them. And so play games in castles you can defend. Build castles with the moats that you can defend. So it's going to be, I will tell you one thing with AI, when people are in a business just for the money and it's not authentically an interest of theirs, you're going to get an IO. So it's actually, this is one positive of AI. Steve Jobs gave that famous Harvard commencement where he said, do what you love. At the risk of sounding like I know more than Steve Jobs, which probably I don't, but I don't like that phrase, do what you love. It's a, what if I'll give you an example. What if I love playing basketball? Which I do. And I was actually a top high school basketball player in the United States. I played at Enloe, and Pete Weiss High School produced a lot of NBA players, my whole league, John Wall, PJ Tucker, all these people. It's a famous school. But I can't play pro basketball. Average pro basketball guy is like 6'6". It's tough. It's tough. And so if you just tell people do what you love, it's an incomplete formula to success. The complete formula, do what you love that the world perceives you as an authentic expert on. That's the formula for wealth. Do what you love. They only gave us half. But if I came out and said, let's say I loved talking about childbirth, and then I go, I'm going to launch a business helping women get painless childbirth. Well, if I put my face on the brand, no woman's going to be like, oh yeah, Tyler authentically had an experience giving birth. I lose my credibility. So you got to find what you love, but that the world would also agree, thumbs up, that this person authentically is an expert. Nobody who ever meets me in person, I have haters, ever says, I bet that Thai guy doesn't read. Like, I'm a 0 percentile. Now, some people still might not like me, but people go, I bet you that guy reads a book or two. So that's a game I need to play. Education, books, so that will withstand the AI world. But anything you're doing inauthentically, let's say you launched you launched an e-commerce business and you're selling tripods, but there's no, you never, your childhood friends wouldn't be like, oh yeah, that Bob guy, he loved tripods. Like, eventually AI will wipe you out. Or a competitor who has a more authentic experience in tripods who uses AI will wipe you. So that's what's going to get wiped, and that's who's going to survive.
Well, it's a good place to end. And again, I appreciate the time and staying up late with us, Ty.
Do it again.
Awesome. Let's do it in person next time, and look forward to fascinating discussion as always. Until I see you again, my friend, thanks, and good night from the U.S.
Thank you so much.
See you, buddy.